Hello, it's me again, back to sort of doing a weekly blog after a couple of weeks off. We're a bit of holiday and a bit of cycling. For those of you who haven't heard, I didn't quite manage to do John O'Groats to Land's End. Two very, well, successful days, all went according to plan. Then I had a sort of the electronic gears on my bike, which is supposed to be the advantage of them, is supposed to be very reliable. They failed, couldn't get it fixed. Came back, picked up the spare bike, happened to have here, having brought it back from Norfolk, then drove down to Wales and did the last two stages. So, going in 7 stages, so there's 3 days missing in the middle. But strange enough, when I did it the other way, Land's End to John O'Groats, went through the middle bit, thought, oh, the Forest of Bowland would be a very nice place for a holiday, and that's where I'm going on holiday in sort of mid-October. So the idea is to fill those 3 days in, and certainly two of those will be able to do while I'm on holiday in the Forest of Bowland, actually on the route. So, and hopefully fill in the last one at some point. So, before the clocks change, I hope I've done it. So, if you sponsor me, I hope that's okay, and you'll sort of don't feel too cheated. So, in the end, not so bad. 600 miles done, 400 miles in the middle to go. The beginning and the end done. So, that's just an update, but also I actually want us to draw on a couple of experiences from my from that ride, which I think are relevant for this today and for a thought for the day, and also for the situation with coronavirus. So my text is from Matthew's Gospel. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble is enough for today. I don't know about you. I'm a planner. I tend to think long term in a way. I like planning long term, and I kind of think it's often the responsible thing to do. I mean, you can't do everything at last minute. You can't just, in a sense, live just from day to day. I suppose in Jesus' time it was rather different. I mean, in a sense, there was a more regular pattern to life and to the day. There was the sort of lot more of the daily tasks to be done. Most people lived a sort of a subsistence level. Probably most jobs were pretty much the same day in, day out. People didn't particularly probably think about career development, etc. etc. So it kind of makes more sense in his time than perhaps today, when we do have to give a bit more thought to the morrow. But as I went and started this ride from John O'Groats to Land's End, I say about 1,000 miles, it did make me think of this verse, and it's kind of strange, isn't it? It's a lesson you learn every time you do these things, and each time you forget it. So it's about a third of these really sort of big long rides I've done in our direction. Did sort of well in Rome as well. And each time I start off, obviously you start off and you're taking the first, few miles, and you're thinking about the end. You're thinking about, oh well, so here we come, Land's End, John O'Groats, Rome, or whatever. And that's a sort of fatal mistake. So this time, strange enough, it was very, very cold on the north coast. You go kind of west along the north coast to begin with. And I looked up the weather in Inverness, and it was about 13, 14 degrees, which was quite mild. I mean, put a couple of extra layers on. Yeah, it's not sort of hot summer, but neither is it sort of, freezing cold. Anyway, I set out, and it's pretty windy, and I got hit by some rain. And the first 25, 30 miles are really, really hard, and you're starting out and your legs are cold and it's early in the morning and you just think, I can't do it. And luckily my support car was driven by Izzy, was behind me, and I felt absolutely miserable. I really got cold, so couldn't feel my fingers, couldn't really feel my feet. I say wet, cold, miserable, about bad as you can be on a bike. And although it was just at the beginning, I had a bit of a sort of not a very long day the day before getting up there, and I just sort of gave up, and I thought, well, I'll just keep pedaling because the car will come past, and I'll just get in it. There's I can't get a few miles, let alone to Land's End, and it's just too much. Um, at the end of the day, I did when I got to Inverness. I looked, and actually, part of the problem was that although it was 13 in Inverness, 100 miles north on that north coast, it was 3 or 4 degrees. So it was really, really. I didn't realise quite how cold it was. Anyway, the road turned inwards and it got a bit better, a bit drier. And luckily, I kind of had quite a good run to lunch. But also, luckily, that actually what normally would have perhaps annoyed me a bit, but didn't, was that actually the car came along later. I actually got to lunch about 2 minutes before. Done sort of about, I think about 80 miles by that time, and was sort of desperate for my lunch. But of course, then you get to lunch and you're relaxed a bit, and then you eat some lunch, and then you think, and you kind of kid yourself. You sort of think, well, I know I'm not going to do this, but I'll start the afternoon and see how I go. And then you get going in the afternoon, and the car zooms off, and you think, well, I'll keep going. Actually, oh yeah, actually, this is going all right now. This is quite good. Well, I'll get to Inverness and I'll see how I feel in the morning. And then you kind of get to Inverness, you have something to eat and a shower and some food, and then even the next morning you think, it's another quite a tough stage, another 150 miles. And I remember the morning of the second day again just being really hard up and down, and took a wrong turn onto a sort of forest track, which wasn't ideal. And but again, you're doing the same thing. You're thinking, okay, well, it's I'm in the middle of a forest now. I can't get a car. I'll just ride till lunch, and then just before lunch, you get a bit of actually, I'm feeling a bit stronger. I'm really sort of warmed up. I'm happy. Well, I'll have some lunch, and then after lunch, I knew there were some climbs, and I thought, well, again, I'll just start off. Now, actually, that did turn out to be the last sort of afternoon, but it was simply because when I woke up next morning, I rather than having 24 gears on the bike, I had two, and I'm certainly wasn't doing the rest of the ride on 2 gears. But it made me think, and then when I resumed it at the end, doing those sort of 2 days at the end of the ride, it became much easier because I just remembered this thing that you can't. And I remember this very clearly in going to Rome and looking around Lille about 3 days in, and thinking, yeah, I can't do this. And then you just recalibrate. And after a bit of while, you just think, right, each time it's just that half a day or that day. Yeah, let me just get to there. And don't think about going any further. And that's what gets you through. So I say the sort of abandon of this one was slightly out of my control, but each time I've done these things, once you get into that mindset of, yes, of course you're not going to get any further than lunchtime. And then when you get to lunch, you're saying, right, let's just start, and then we can always phone up and get the car back. And I suppose that's a kind of good life lesson, and something that brings things home about what Jesus is teaching in that. But I think it's particularly relevant today because I think one of the things about coronavirus, and one of the things we're talking about with sort of a group who are planning things, is of course your planning has to become a bit more uncertain, because as we know, things can change quite quickly, and some of the things you thought you were going to do or be able to do, you can't do, or occasionally things have sort of opened up, but mainly there is that feeling of, and that can be really difficult because I think we are used to kind of planning and getting into sort of slightly longer term thinking. And actually, just I think sometimes it has got me through by thinking, right, I don't know what the rest of the week's going to look like, and there are lots of people saying, well, what will it be like in 2 weeks? What will it be like in 2 months? What will happen at Christmas? And actually, having to say, we don't know, and there's no point, planning too far ahead. And whatever plans we make might have to change. And sometimes, actually, when you get really fed up with that, just say, actually, what do I have to do today? What's in the diary today? What do I have to get through? Right, I can get through that. That's fine. Let's just do that. So do not worry about tomorrow. For tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble is enough for today. So I think that's good for Jesus' time. It's good for long distance bike rides and other adventures, but it's also good slightly in a world where we are asked to plan. It's good for something to do with coronavirus, where that planning has become more difficult. And actually, there will be days when we just need to think, just get me through today, Lord, and then tomorrow we'll see. God bless.